Okay, yeah, there, now it's going.
Okay,
Why 7 times, if you don't mind? I mean, is it 7 times
Seven-
different, like marriage? Same
so much that has to do with
7 what?
Judaism is connected with 7,
Yeah.
right? Kabbalistically, they're the 7 lower sefirot,
Right,
right? There are 7 days of the week.
right.
The Kala walks 7 times around her husband, and we could keep going and going. We could just do a class on 7. I think the most important thing is that 7 represents the entirety of the known world, right? And 8 represents infinity.
Okay.
So the entirety of the world is Hashem's. We march around 7 times to demonstrate that Hashem fills the entire world. That would be my quick answer. I mentioned 70 oxen. Thankfully, we're not responsible for that right now. It's a lot of responsibility. Another fascinating part of the holiday is something that we read also. It says, you shall celebrate it. So let's look at this next mitzvah, okay? It's called to be happy on the festival. Look at chapter Devarim, that's Deuteronomy 16. Deuteronomy 16, verse 14. Thank you so much. Doug, you want to read that? V'samachta b'chagecha.
You shall rejoice on your festival. You, your son, your daughter, your slave, your maidservant, the Levite, the proselyte, the orphan, and the widow who are in your cities. The 70 period shall you celebrate to Hashem your God in the place that Hashem your God will choose.
Right.
For Hashem will have blessed you in all your
Oh.
and all your handiwork, and you shall be completely joyous.
Completely. Hayita ach sameach. We have to have complete joy on Sukkot. We do everything we can to maintain and to be as happy as possible. It is really just being happy is observing the holiday. How cool is that? Now, in the days of the temple, we had a special offering, a shlomim, which was a shlomim offering, which was to rejoice. We don't have that today. What do we have? What do we eat instead of shlomim today? I know maybe in LA, it doesn't make everybody happy. We eat meat. Right? So it says in the Talmud that in our time, you're supposed to have meat and wine to be happy. Now listen to this. If you're married, one has a duty to make their wife happy with beautiful clothing and to distribute sweets to all the members of the household. They're also obliged to make poor people happy. If someone did not bring happiness to any poor people before Sukkot, it's like a disgrace for them. It says, I will spread, listen to this, ready? Malachi. The Chafetz Chaim says, it's like this verse in Malachi, I will spread dung on their faces,
Right.
the dung of your festival. Malachi was saying that all the people were celebrating and forgetting the poor people.
Oh.
So it was like throwing dung on the festival.
Shouldn't that always be?
You can observe it in 2 ways of making sure that everybody, you can donate to people who feed poor people, or you just invite people to your sukkah who might need a meal, right? You do not have to become a first-person aid agency. Thankfully, there are organizations whose mission is to help people who are in need. But just like we have to give tzedakah for other things, there's a special mitzvah on Passover. It's called Kimcha de Pischa. And for Sukkot, of giving money to make sure that poor people or people of lesser means have enough to be happy, right? The goal is not that they just have food. They have to be happy. So it's not enough to be like, okay, here's some Wonder Bread and margarine. So Tomchei Shabbos gives out beautiful boxes to those on their route. Meat and fish, all kinds of things. Proper food. Yes, Lali.
Is, in this context, is there any connection to spiritually poor or only physically poor?
The Torah is only talking that our obligation is on the monetarily poor. I will add that if you can bring someone to your sukkah who is disconnected from Sukkot, who otherwise wouldn't eat in a sukkah, that's a huge, huge mitzvah, because you're doing multiple mitzvot at the same time, right? It's like anybody here play Scrabble? It's like a triple word score, right? It's a triple word score mitzvah, right? You boom, 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 the numbers just fly off the charts, and before you know it, you're in Olam Haba. I mean, okay. So now we've looked at all the main mitzvot. Don't work, it's a negative commandment. Rest, positive commandment. Hang out in the sukkah, 7 days. Everything we do, wave the lulav and etrog, be happy. If you focus on those things, your Sukkot will be as literally by the book. Now, of course, there are details to these things. But if you keep the mitzvahs in mind on Sukkot, you cannot go wrong. And if you do, it's just because you didn't know or you made a mistake and you fix it. But I find that people can get lost in a lot of things. I get crazy questions, Erev Sukkot, about the most mundane little tiny things. But did that person give tzedakah for Sukkot? I don't know. They might have spent $500 on new Sukkah decorations, but did they make it kosher? So that's what we're going to talk about next. Now, this will be distributed to everybody who wants. I'll make sure that Tully has a copy of it. I started putting it together for the class. It's called The Concise Laws and Customs of the Sukkah. Unfortunately, it's 5 pages long. But I did it as questions. I saw somebody else did its questions. They didn't, it was a nice attempt. They did a nice job. But, I'm a Virgo, I guess. So, at least that's what some say, that's why I had to completely redo this and make it really user-friendly. So, everybody will be able to download this, before the holiday. But let's quickly go through it. Who can build a sukkah? Anybody. Anybody can build a sukkah. However, the schach should be put out by a Jew. Can we use an old sukkah? There's a joke, My wife's kvetchy at me that I didn't put away the sukkah. But hey, it's up now, so who's laughing? Bad joke. The truth is, you can use an old sukkah. But let's say you've got a pergola, right? Like a built-in thing.
Right.
So, as long as you first build the walls, then put the schach on top, you're good. If you have a year-round sukkah, you should replace one little tefach of schach.
Oh, that's fine.
Very important. I see this mistake done all the time, especially when non-Jewish people are hired to make the sukkah. No offense, they just don't know. They put the schach on first, and then they put the walls, and the sukkah's not kosher. What can I use for the walls? Anything that remains stable in a typical breeze without shaking. We have to be careful, folks.
Oh, yeah.
Plywood, veneer panels, pre-made lattice are your best bet. Tarps are fine, but they have to be tight. Or you can come up with some system of wires and stuff to hold them in place. I just say, go to Home Depot, or Lowe's. Nobody's sponsoring this one. Although you could sponsor Lowe's if you'd like to. There is very affordable pre-made lattice. It's exactly the right height.
Oh.
And it's like 8 feet long and 3 feet tall. Guess how tall the minimum wall has to be? 32 inches. It's just right. Put it around the base of your sukkah. Keep your plastic walls to keep out the air and whatever. Put that around, you're golden. If you just have the tarps, I'm afraid to tell you, your sukkah might not be kosher. Okay? How many walls does a sukkah need?
2.5.
So the mitzvah mina muvchar, good, David. The mitzvah mina muvchar, the Chai Adam, others say, should have 4 walls if you can. But Moshe taught, the Talmud says, Torah Moshe Sinai. It's not, 2 walls and an additional piece is enough. That additional piece has to be 10 tefachim tall, which is minimum 32 inches, and 3 tefachim wide, minimum. But of course, bigger, a full wall is better if you can do it. Can you use pre-existing walls? Absolutely. Don't kill yourself. If you've got a courtyard or you've got a couple walls that are good, build the sukkah against there. Absolutely fine to use pre-existing walls. In fact, you can use your dining room, take a chainsaw, cut a hole in the roof. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Just kidding. Don't do that. Okay. There can be gaps. Yes, you need to have the schach covering the whole sukkah, but you can have gaps up to 3 handbreadths. Okay. And there can even be a little overhang. Let's say for whatever reason there's a little bit of you're building it under an overhang, so you can have a little overhang covering sukkah. It's okay. But if it's more than 3 tefachim, a porch that covers part of the sukkah, it's no good.
How much is the tefillin again?
3 handbreadths. So 6.6 to 10 inches, depending on who's.
So you're referring to the roof, but for the walls, you can't have any gaps?
You can. Also, you can have 3 handbreadths. So you could have, for example, let's say you have one wall and another wall and there's a gap.
Yeah.
As long as it's less than, the gap is not more than, I say 6.5, just to be safe, inches. It's as if they're connected. Okay? Others disagree, by the way, more stringent opinions that say, no, they figure, but most people say, yeah.
The area, the overhang, let's say you have an overhang, is only that part of the sukkah puzzle or the whole sukkah's puzzle?
If the overhang is less than 6 inches, 6 or less, then everything in the sukkah is kosher. Some will say more, by the way, but I'm just giving you guys the stringent opinion so that we make sure we're all good. If it's more, that part of the sukkah can't be used for blessings, as we talked about. Rest of the sukkah is fine. What 5 things make kosher schach? It has to be from the ground. It has to be cut from the ground. It can't absorb tuma. In other words, I have this great wood and I made a ladder from it, and now I'm going to use it for. No, you can't use a ladder for schach because a ladder is a tool, or a handle of a rake. You can't use for schach because it's a tool. And it can't be metal because it didn't grow from the ground. It has to shade most of the sukkah. More shade than sun. Meruba. Tzila, meruba mitzilasa. So somebody sent me a video today. And I wrote right back, not enough schach. Very easy to see from the pictures. And it hadn't even really dried yet. When palm fronds dry, guess what they do? They shrink. It cannot be directly under a tree, porch, or roof. The sukkah cannot be built directly under. You could have the most kosher-looking sukkah, but if there's a roof over it or a tree right over it, there is a little bit of leeway when it comes to. There's a little leeway when it comes to trees. It's a little beyond the capacity of our class now, but let's say you have a tree that's like 40 feet above. So the shade of that tree is not really hitting the sukkah, so you're okay. Okay. What do you use to support this? If you put the schach right on the metal, it is okay. However, it's much, much better to not do that. It's much better to rest the schach on wood that rests on metal poles. That's a much, much better. But if you see somebody who doesn't have that, don't think that they're, a heretic or, from a strange cult. It's okay. It's okay. What do you use to keep the schach in place? There's wind in LA. What do? Put 2x4s on top of your schach to keep it down. But let's say, what if I'm really worried? If you're really worried, can I use zip ties? You can zip tie the schach to the roof. However, you can only do that if the schach would have stayed put without it under normal conditions. But if you're at the beach, right, if you're in Venice where there's a lot of wind, and if you don't have a lot of 2x4s, you're going to have to use something like a zip tie. But again, be a question. How thick should the schach be? Well, we want it to be thick so that have more shade. But the Talmud discusses maybe it shouldn't be too thick. There's an idea maybe you could see the stars through the schach. The answer is it shouldn't be so thick that it's impossible to discern the stars, and that rain can't get through. But if it was that thick, it's still okay. In fact, in Gateshead, they use bales of hay.
Really?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. Why do we spend so much time in the sukkah? The sukkah remembers two things, as we saw in the pasuk at the very beginning of the class. Two things: the clouds of glory that protected the Jewish people, and the actual sukkahs that we went in. So it's both things. And we remember these things when we're in there. We should be mindful that this mitzvah is a remembrance of those things. Every second a person's in the sukkah is a mitzvah of dwelling in the sukkah. Even if you're sending an email, not on Shabbos, right? And it's a mitzvah we do with our whole body. How cool is that? What other mitzvah do we do with our whole body? Mikvah, right? But you can't spend that much time in the mikvah. They'll probably arrest you. Okay. Okay. What do I do in the sukkah? Everything. Almost. Okay. Should do everything you can. You want to, this is what Talmud tells us, make your sukkah your permanent dwelling place and make your home your temporary dwelling place. You want to swap. You want to bring in nice things. You want to bring in tables or chairs, if you can, carpets and so forth. Decorate it beautifully. Dishes, nice things. Make the sukkah look beautiful to your ability. But if you don't have the stuff, you could use disposable plates. It's okay. But if you have nicer things, that's good too. What shouldn't we do in the sukkah? Well, we shouldn't keep dirty dishes in the sukkah or dirty pots or garbage. Right away, you want to keep the sukkah clean. So, because it's a holy place. Just like we don't want to leave the shul dirty for too long, right? We want to keep the sukkah clean. Who's obliged and exempt? As I said before, men are supposed to have all their meals in the sukkah. A woman can have all their meals in the sukkah. And women and children are encouraged to use the sukkah, especially today. We want to give as many positive reasons to be excited about Judaism. Everybody should be in the sukkah as much as possible. But if it's impractical, you can eat indoors. Those who are not obliged. What night is most important? I mentioned that. What's the order of Kiddush? So you make Kiddush, then you say Leishev Basukkah, Asher Ksham B'Savitzana Leishev Basukkah, and then you say Shechianu. The second night, you flip them. First you say Shechianu, and then Leishev. It's very helpful if you have this printed out in a machzor, or have a machzor, and I think even in the art scroll, it will say, on second night, reverse the last two blessings. So let's practice this. Asher, Kiddushanu, B'mitzvotav, Vitzivanu, Leishev, Basukkah. What does Leishev mean? It sounds like to sit, right? In modern Hebrew, it's to sit. So sometimes you see people doing this. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher k'shem b'sav leishev b'sukkah. And then they sit and they eat. It's nice, but you can do it standing up. Leishev halachically is to dwell in the sukkah, right? It's to dwell, to be in the sukkah. So, and certainly at a shul, when there's not enough seats in the sukkah for everybody, it's not a bracha levatala, right? It's not an unnecessary blessing to say leishev because you do not need to sit for the blessing. How often do you say the bracha? Well, if you're in and out and you have a lot of meals there, you can say it multiple times.
Oh, wow.
And if you finished a meal and you benched and you started a new meal, it's a shaila, so you should go out and probably come back in. What about a snack? I'm just gonna have this bizli in the sukkah.
I don't think you say Lashev.
Correct, David. You do not say leishev. It's only said over mazonos or hamotzi or what liquid? Wine, exactly. We say leishev on wine. I wish you had to say it on nice scotch, but hopefully we can get it in the next edition of the Talmud. Okay.
Brandy can. But
We talked about sleeping. I didn't mean to cause a ruckus before, but you absolutely can sleep in the sukkah. It says it in the Shulchan Aruch. Yes, there are customs and there are people who do not sleep in the sukkah because they feel it's such a holy thing you shouldn't. And I'm not judging those people, but the normal custom is, if you're able to sleep in the sukkah. Children can sleep in the sukkah too, and you can mechanech them, you can teach them this way. And as I mentioned before, a husband and wife can sleep in the sukkah, and it says very explicitly that marital relations are permitted in the sukkah. So, enjoy. Okay. Who are the ushpizin?
The guests.
Guests, good. What guests? Who are the ushpizin? Everybody has the same guess? Yes! Check this out. And this was written by the Holy Rebbitzin. There's a custom to invite the holy guests, the 7 shepherds of Jewish history, into the sukkah each night of Sukkot. Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, Yosef, Moshe, Aaron, and David. But everyone knows the holy leaders would never go anywhere without their wives, so we're sure that the holy mothers of Israel also are exalted guests. By acknowledging the ushpizin, we amplify our hospitality mitzvah, and we invite holy ancestors' strength to give us strength. Beautiful. That, in a nutshell, is ushpizin. It's very Kabbalistic. You don't have to say the whole prayer. If it's too much for you, because you look, I've got all these svarim, right? It's like 3 pages of ushpizin. No, it's okay. Just say, tonight I invite David. Good, you're good. If you can do more, do more. Okay. How long? We mentioned. In Israel, we spend less time. And that we have an extra day here in Gullus, in exile. Physical exile, right? So we have an 8-day festival. The first 2 are going to be days of no work, and then 6 more days of Chol Moed. Well, I mean, altogether, it's... Yeah, so... But it's Chol Moed Shabbos, but it's still, right? Okay. But you can't cook or anything like that on Shabbos, so... Shabbos always, adds and also makes it challenging because you have a 3-day yontif. This year you have to make an eruv tavshilin. So that is a procedure by which we set aside food while we're preparing for the holiday, which we're going to eat on Shabbat. And it kind of, just like an eruv, brings everything together so we can carry. The eruv tavshilin allows us to cook on the Yom Tov for Shabbos, which otherwise would not be permitted. Can I put a bug zapper in the sukkah?
Wait, sorry, it's something you serve on Shabbos then?
You're supposed to eat it on Shabbos, right? So I always say put a can of tuna fish in something you're going to eat. But truthfully, you can put aside nice food. You can put a challah and you're supposed to have 2 things. Water doesn't count. 2 foods.
It doesn't have to be cooked. It could be just food that you want.
Correct. That's right. A lot of times you put a can of tuna fish because, you can always use a can of tuna fish. Can I put a bug zapper in the sukkah? I recommend not. I think a bug repeller, like something that repels bugs, not like a stinky candle, but like some other way, or a bug catcher, which is different. There are things called bug catchers that you kind of suck them in. It's okay that you don't see them. But one time we were full confession. One time we were really concerned about bugs. We put up a bug zapper, not really thinking it through, and all through Yontif. That was scary. Okay.
The problem is they have, it's all the bees and yellow jacks around.
Yeah, so you can put up strips outside. You can hang up strips, absolutely, to keep out. Yeah. By the way, it's not a mitzvah, but I always suggest you have a fan in the sukkah if you can, just on what do you call it? On oscillating mode to try to keep, flies and stuff off the table. In our sukkah, we always put a ceiling fan too, which sometimes helps. Can you light candles in the sukkah? Yes, but please do it carefully. Okay, we don't want any fires. You absolutely can light your yontif candles there, and you can light decorative candles there. And now we're gonna one more thing. We're gonna end the recording, and then it's time for anybody's questions. Or we can go till it runs out of battery. The last thing is to remember this, is that Sukkah is a very complicated holiday. It is. However, if you focus on those 5 things, you're going to have a great Chag. Lulav and etrog, refraining from working, and positively resting, right?